Hi guys and welcome to another video on the European Gaming League channel. Today we are not discussing COD for a change. I'm sure you're all sick to death of me talking about that, so we're going to talk about Gears of War. Of course, we do have San Diego coming up this weekend. All the best teams in the world going over to California to compete in one of the biggest Gears events of the year. I've got Frew and Toby. Obviously, we don't have Elliot, so some people will be upset, some people won't be, let's be honest. I'm going to miss his puns and all the silly things he says. To be honest with you, I was hoping Elliot was going to come on, but never mind, boys. Thank you very, very much for coming on either way. We're going to discuss mostly around Europe, but obviously we will be talking a little bit about NA and our overall predictions. First and foremost, I just want to discuss the pools. We all have them in front of us, I hope. I'm just looking at them now because I don't know them off by heart, of course. First and foremost, let's talk about Pool A. What are your thoughts on that one? Frew, I'll go with you first.
Oh, it's the Optic Showdown, right?
Yeah.
We've got Optic Gaming and Optic Mexico in there. Obviously going to be a grudge match. They're both fantastic teams. Both, debatably top in their region. And I think that's going to be a fantastic match to watch. I got Simplicity in there as well. So, that's Toy Soldiers team. Sneaky and Xenon in there as well. Can always cause an upset. And that battle for second place is going to be a tough one, I think.
Yeah, I think you look at them all and, we've got names on every single roster there. Of course, Optic Gaming will be their favourites. And I think you're absolutely right saying that both these teams are definitely the best in their region so far. Or you could definitely argue that point. Toby, what do you think of Pool B?
Pool B, I think you got to say the Echo Fox side is the favourite to take that one. I think it'll be a really good fight, actually, for second place between Rise and Fire and Ice. Roster changes left, right, and centre in NA right now, or as of recently, and Pool B is no exception. But yeah, I genuinely really favor Echo Fox going into this roster, as I'm sure I'll touch upon later. So I don't think they'll have any problem actually doing really well in that pool. The question is, how are Rise and Fire and Ice going to perform in that one?
Mm-hmm. And Rise, they stepped up big time in pools last time, right? So always a team to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now let's talk about the European teams as we move to Pool C. It's going to be Ghost Gaming World Best. Lucent in there as well. Thoughts on this pool and thoughts of how Lucent will do in it? Because, I mean, for me, that's a pretty decent pool for them.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best pools they could actually have been picked on. Lucent, obviously, they're 3/5 of the Fable roster from last event. And, well, that Fable roster beat Ghost Gaming last time. It was a straight 2-0. And they'll be looking to repeat that, right? They're 5 extremely talented players. I think they match up well into Ghost. Lucent will be looking for blood in this pool. They're 3rd seed in it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them come out top.
Toby, same sort of sentiments from you?
Yeah, I'm curious to see actually how that developing rivalry will be now between Ghost and Lucent. It's a very interesting matchup, given how well Lucent performed against what is considered or was considered at least such a dominant team or very good team of that in NA currently in Ghost Gaming. What I'm looking out for, though, especially is World Best Gaming. You have Demo Barons, God Plays, Clouts, Blast the God, and Alex Shock. And, those are no strangers to us at all. They are some very good players. Demo, of course, he retired, but now he's back. God Plays, of course, roster change after roster change for him as of recently. I think that could be a team that causes an upset there. So, honestly, it could be anyone's pool at this point in time, given Ghost Gaming, their inconsistent performance as of late online. That is the most unpredictable pool potentially of the whole event.
Mm-hmm. And also like World's Best and Ghost, like there's a grudge match there as well, right? I mean, you've got God Plays. He ended up being the scapegoat really for Ghost Gaming last event, and I don't think it was all that fair. They had a tough bracket. They played okay. They didn't play to their best, but yeah, God Plays. He got sacked out of that team very, very quickly. Ended up on World's Best with a good group of players around him. Going to be a feisty one to watch between Ghost and World's Best.
So as far as you're concerned, if you're a European fan, you're feeling pretty decent about it, but nothing is definite. We could definitely see Lucent do some work here. Obviously, we know they're passed against Ghost Gaming, so we know that Lucent have been improving as well. We'll talk on them a little bit more soon, but we'll move to Pool D. Space Station, obviously sitting at the top of that. I'm going to say it correctly. Reciprocity. Is that right?
Yes, I think you got it.
Was it Reciprocity or I think it's Reciprocity.
Anyway, bit more of an O.
Yeah, I'm murdering it. Anyway, Elevator in there as well, obviously open bracket team to come in. Thoughts on Space Station's chances to win this one, because that's what they'll be aiming for.
Yeah, I mean, they're on paper the best team in the pack, and quite honestly, I think that's true. Going to be a tough game against Reciprocity, the Rec Pack, let's say. Soto and Lava on that team. They're joined by a couple of others as well in Pell and Crash. So like super, super strong squad there actually in second seed. And that's going to be a tough one for them. I think they've got a much harder group in comparison to Lucent.
Toby?
Yeah, I think I agree with that actually. Reciprocity, which I believe is the correct way to say.
Yeah, reciprocity.
Say it hopefully. I think we've got it there. Yeah, I think Reciprocity in particular, very, very strong roster. It's a very scary roster of that. It all depends actually how well they turn up in the event. Lava, Soto, Crash, Pal, Vital. These, of course, Affinity coach as well. We know how good of a coach he is in the North American side. I think it all depends actually on SSG. I think, yes, they're the favorite team going into this one. On paper, they should be able to come away with the first place from Pool D, but they need to show up and perform as good as ever, and they should be able to beat both of these teams. But the upset factor, I don't know, maybe is in Reciprocity if they do show up and perform at their absolute best individually and as a team.
Okay, cool. So no easy routes for either two of the European teams in pools. We can talk a little bit about the other teams going. We do know Fable are attending the new Fable roster, which is Marsh, Sammy K, Ash, J Rage, and Incisive. You would expect them to make it into pools, wouldn't you, really?
Oh, I think so, yeah. I mean, they're a bunch of players that are used to be playing, at this top level of gears. They've made it to pools before with, the old Bittersweet roster. And to be honest, like, the open bracket over in NA, it's strong, but it's not as strong as the this Fable roster is used to playing at, and I think they'll be able to at least make it into the championship bracket, if not pools.
Yeah, similar thoughts actually. Europe historically have performed very well in the open bracket when they've actually traveled over to NA, which is kind of an oversight much of the time. When people compare regions, they forget how well EU actually do when they do travel over. Maybe not so much in pools and championship bracket, but at least in open bracket, they do very, very well. And yeah, this team, it's got bags of talent. The experience has just been building up over the months. Ash, J Rage, Incisive, Sammy, and of course Marsh, former player for SSG, is kind of like a swap, if you will, between Jack and Marsh. And I think on paper, Marsh is a very good addition. I know it's easy to say that, but at least as a characteristic of his play and that team, I think the slaying power he adds could be a very big defining factor in actually getting this team over the difficult humps that they've fallen by at the wayside at past events. So I'm actually really excited to see this team perform at the event, and I have high hopes for them.
Okay, good. I mean, it just seems as if everyone has a fairly positive outlook on Europe's chances so far. Let's delve into the teams a little bit further. Space Station, outside of pools, how do we feel they're going to do? And at the same time, I want to know, do you think they've got a better chance now than they used to have when they had Marsh in, or do you think it's worse? Of course, we had a little discussion before this saying that it seems to be that they're putting a lot more time in recently. Do you think that'll benefit them more than how they used to do it when they used to be playing with Marsh and used to maybe not be practicing as much? Frew, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, I think so. I think the move to Space Station has been a godsend for them. They've got an org behind them that really backs them, really believes in them. It's opened up their schedule. They can train against these American teams much more often. And I think the change, I don't think it's better or worse, to be honest. I think it's a different type of player in Jack. He's I think a little bit more reserved, not in his gameplay, but just in the options he chooses. He always kind of is there to clean up at the end of fights, whereas Marsh is usually, they're head down, the gun's going, first one in there. So maybe a little bit of a change up there. But quite honestly, no, I think Jack's a fantastic player. He really has shown up for them. What we've seen of him so far has been good, and I think they'll be prepared for this event coming in. It's going to be hopefully the best Space Station roster we can see.
Toby, same from you?
Yeah, I'd hope so. I'd hope it is the best Space Station we've ever seen. Even back at the previous EGL, Phelpsy was very humble in his post-game interviews and post-event interview at the fact that perhaps they didn't practice as much for that event, but they were just looking ahead for that next Pro Circuit event. And practicing, boot camping, and training, all for this next step onto NA soil. And I think, at least from what I've heard, they have been sticking to that. They have been very regimental in their practice, and you'd hope so, because yes, Jack is a new player, so they do want to build up any chemistry lost that they lost with Marsh leaving the team. But I kind of agree with Frew in that I don't think it's a roster that's better or worse necessarily. It's just a little bit different, because Jack there's a contrast between him and the slaying power of Marsh. They are quite different players, even though, saying that, Phelps, he did mention that he wants Jack to be more of a slayer, more of a Marsh-like player in his gameplay, which I think he's capable of, by the way. He was my favorite player from the previous event, and I have high hopes for him, and I have high hopes for SSG. I think the competition outside of Optic Gaming, which is it could be the strongest roster we've ever seen in Gears Esports, to be honest, on paper. A lot of the teams, they've had massive roster changes. Ghost Gaming's not what it once was, so if this is going to be an event, or the best event yet, at least how it's on paper, Space Station, they have great opportunity here, I think.
Yeah, I think what you say with Jack having to fill big boots with Marsh, they are big boots to fill, but I suppose if they've been putting that practice in, we could expect the same sort of results that we usually seen from Space Station previously. Obviously, when they were Fable and EU was finest, etc. But now let's move on to Lucent. Obviously, a team that haven't been together as long, but a team that have made waves since they formed, of course. You know, we did see them come in an era where Space Station have been dominating. Space Station continue to do so, but not necessarily in the same fashion. What do you think about Lucent? Toby, I'll go you first this time, so Frew can try and steal your answers, as you've just done with his. I'm trying. But yeah, what do you expect now to Lucent at this event? Do you think it really just depends on how they do in pools, or do you think they really could make a big run?
Yeah, I think pools will be important. I think everyone will be, us included, evidently, is aware of how perhaps favorable that pool really is. They've played against Ghost Game before. They've beaten them. World Best Gaming is a very new roster, even though it's quite stacked. They have such huge potential to cause an upset here. And I think with the passion of Jack Reaction and these players on this Lucent roster, they have such great opportunity. And actually, if they do perform early on, they can maintain that and kind of steamroll that into some great success. On paper, I mean, looking at their past result, they did just hand out a 7-0 map victory in their match yesterday against SSG, which did turn heads. Bear in mind, it was just a map, but it's kind of an indication, if you will, as to Lucent's current form online. So you'd expect and hope, rather, that the practice has been on point for Lucent, as good as it possibly can be. There's, of course, the language barriers that have always been a consideration. So practice is crucial for Lucent going right up to this tournament. So, yeah, I mean, they have it all set out in front of them. They know exactly how they need to perform. They know what they're capable of. They just need to carry it out on the day and really start off strong in Pool C.
Yeah, same from you, Frew?
Yeah, similar. I kind of agree, right? They do have a fantastic chance at getting an upset. And one of the big things that these pools have kind of shown to me is that I think this, against the top 4 teams in each pool, this is the best pool that Lucent could have had, right? They dodge Optic, they dodge Echo Fox, and you've got Ghost and Space Station, who they're roughly similar in kind of placements over the last few events, but they have a mental block against Space Station. So I think it's actually better that they go against the 3rd best team rather than the 4th on paper, and kind of just dodge that Space Station matchup. With regards to where they're going to place, I honestly think it depends on the bracket for them. If they dodge Space Station and if they dodge Optic, I think they've got a good shot. I honestly do. And as Toby's been saying, they're clipping at the heels of Space Station in EU, and that's a top 3 team, right? Like they're taking maps consistently off a top 3 team in the world. Whether or not they've had the practice time, they don't have a coach as well, which is another thing. So they're not going to be, as practice kind of outside the game, if that makes sense. They're not going to have that person to spend as much time there. That will tell when we get to San Diego. But I think they've got a good shot at this. I honestly do.
Okay, cool. I'm going to ask you another question that sort of can stem from the conversation we just had. Obviously, we started having conversations a few months ago now, and we talked about Europe as a whole. Do you think, since we started speaking, what was it before? It was just after Sheffield, wasn't it? do you think that the European scene has developed and got stronger in the past 6 months or so? Frew, you go first, Frew.
Yeah, sure. I think at the top it has. I think everyone is kind of I was going to say leeching off Space Station, if that is a term to use, I guess. But I think the experience that Space Station are bringing back from this, top end play, I think that's filtering down over the region, and I think these top teams are starting to take it a little bit more seriously because they are getting funded to these events, right? They are getting funded to do well, and the drive is there for some players. Jack Reaction, he said we'll be ready for Liverpool. We'll be even more ready for San Diego, and I believe him. I actually do. I think he's got the drive again. I think he's got a good team around him, and I think a lot of the players at this top level have that drive. I think Space Station are the same at the moment. I think they're hungry for a major. I think they really want to make it to the top, and they've been so close, so recently. Maybe this is their event. And even in the open bracket, your Fable. They put on a good show saying, we don't really care too much, but they do care. They're at every single event.
Of course you do.
They always show up. Like, they may not show up right at the top level, but they are consistently, top 3, top 4 in Europe. They're consistently doing well here. And they keep going. So hats off to them. I want to see them do well this event. And Regal as well. Regal, they're the same. They are hungry beyond measure. They're a fantastic set of Spanish and French gentlemen, and well, yeah, I think they can make waves as well if they make it through. They've got the fire, they're a very strong team once they get going.
And Toby, I don't want to interrupt you before you jump in, but I think Regal are another testament to how the EU scene may have developed, of course, over the past couple of months. They are a team who sort of in and around the placements at Sheffield, and then when we got to London, they did better. Okay, well, at Liverpool, maybe not as well as they would have liked, but at the same time, we've seen that development from teams like that, and it can be a testament to the European scene and how they have developed in the past 6 months or so. And I mean, let's touch on them. Toby, what do you think Regal can do? Obviously, we expect them to make it to pools, right?
You'd hope so, yeah. I think on paper they are perhaps the weakest team going into this event. Fable as a roster on paper, you'd argue maybe Regal could outdo them at the event, but I think just the general experience, it really does benefit Fable there in the North American region. I think Regal, it really does come down to how they perform on the day and how they show up, because it's such a nerve-wracking environment going to a major pro circuit event. Remember, many of these players, they're fairly new as it stands to the LAN scene in general. Yes, they've had a few events now under their belt, but they're still fairly new in terms of the competitors here from the rest of Europe in Fable, Lucent, SSG. So that's always a consideration going into it. And I think going back to that point, right, in terms of EU and the past 6 months, it's kind of a testament as to the change in dynamic, right? You've had so many veterans who've stopped playing as of recently, or gone through dramatic roster changes compared to what they've usually played under since UE. That there's been a change from the older veterans taking the limelight. Think loads of French players like Baghdad, for example. He's not playing as much, if any, anymore. And I think Regal are just the perfect limelight here, just showing that anything is possible as of right now in Europe. And if you have the raw skill, if you have the commitment and the teammates around you, you can really, grind your way up to the top and start competing against the likes of, say, Fable, Lucent, and SSG. So it's really nice to see how that's developed over the months in EU.
Cool. Okay, we're going to move on to predictions now. I think we've discussed Europe quite enough and their potential. Frew, I'll go with you. Could you give me your top 3 predictions? I've got no issues with who you're going to put as number 1, and then we'll see where you're going to go number 2 and number 3.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go Optic, don't you? Optic Gaming as the number 1 seed. They're looking stronger than ever. They 7-0'd Ghost in a 2K the other week. Like, they are just looking fantastic. You'd be silly to bet against them, to be honest with you. If a team is going to beat them, I would say it's Space Station. I can't see an American team beating them. I honestly can't. But they have faltered against European and Latin American teams in the past. We saw saw the old Space Station roster take them out of the winners bracket. We saw Splice come in and knock them out of the losers bracket. They've lost to these international, so-called international teams before. So because of that, I've got to put Space Station second. Second and third is a tough one, to be honest. I'm going to go Space Station second. I'm going to go Echo Fox third. Okay. I cannot see Ghost coming up any further than that this time round. Maybe next event once that roster's settled a bit, but I don't think they've got the practice in just yet.
Okay, cool. I want to touch on your point about Space Station against Optic and Optic struggling against teams outside of North America. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's a pressure thing, or do you think it's just a stylistic thing?
I think it's a mentality thing.
Yeah.
I think it's we don't have much info on these teams. Obviously, there's a lot more info on Space Station now than there was when Space Station beat Optic, but I think it's a mentality thing. I think the teams from Europe, the teams from Latin America, they go into these big matchups and they just think, you're another team. We're going to beat you. We're the best in our region.
Yeah.
Like that's what they go in thinking. It's best to be best.
And underestimating thing.
Yeah, exactly. You go in on a high. You think, we are the best team in our region. You are the best team in your region. Let's go at it. Yeah. Whereas every other team in America goes in thinking, oh God, these guys are seeded higher than us. These guys are first best. We're third best or something like that, right? Like
sort of bow down to it.
Exactly. And we have the same problem here in Europe is that when teams go against Space Station, they give them that respect. And then Space Station start to walk over. They get cocky. They run away with it, right? And Optic does the same thing in America. Okay. I don't know if it's going to happen this event, but if it's going to happen, that's who I see taking it.
Okay, cool. Toby, what about you? You still thinking Optic first, I'd imagine, but outside of that, although you might throw a curveball at me here and just completely ruin the setup, I've just given you that, but never mind.
I think you'd be crazy to bet against Optic Gaming taking first in terms of prediction, at least going into it. The roster is just so scary now that it seems impossible to even consider a way that they perhaps lose this event. Yes, I kind of agree with the sentiment that if it's going to be a team that beats them, it's going to be a European team such as SSG. I think if that's the case, I think it's mainly due to stylistically how Space Station play. Last time they played Optic as well as they did, it was because they just kept throwing down a boom shot and forcing team shotgun fights, which is where SSG really shines. And it really does take some of that extremely good teamwork concepts and aspects away from Optic, because it really does at that point come down to shotguns if both teams are hitting their basic rotations, if you will. And of course, that's a great opportunity for SSG to really take down any team. Now, in terms of the prediction for second and third, I'm actually going to go the other way around. I'm going to go with Echo Fox second and Space Station third. Nothing against SSG. It's just from what I've seen of Echo Fox, yes, inconsistent performances, but the performances they have had that have been very positive, they have been very, very positive of that. I really do like this new Echo Fox roster. I fancy them going into this one. Space Station third, and I can't see Ghost Gaming cracking the top three. I've lost so much confidence in this roster. They were looking so good in recent times, but the roster changes, the inconsistent performances. Likewise with the rest of the North American teams, I think the top three, Optic, Echo, and Space Station, I think that's quite a firm prediction that many individuals in this scene would predict. But definitely with Optic first. No doubt.
Excellent. Well, Frew, I hear you're going to be actually able to put your predictions across actually on the desk in person. How much are you looking forward to going over to your first major?
I can't wait, honestly. I fly out on Wednesday morning.
Is it a first international event as well?
It'll be the first international, in terms of the ones Gears-wise. Yeah. I went to one in Brussels, but yeah, it'll be my first major, especially first major Gears event. And yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to watch the European teams, take names over there. I think
I expect to see you with flares in the crowd, to be honest with you, and I expect nothing less.
Top off, swirling those flares around. I got a cape ready. It's going to be great.
Oh, a cape as well.
No, I don't know how much I'm going to be doing, if anything. I've put my foot forward and said, hey, if you need me to do things, I will do things. Just let me know what you need me for. So maybe I'll be on the analyst desk. Maybe I'll cast something. Maybe I'll be A stream, B stream. Maybe I'll be sat in the crowd. I don't know. But either way, I'm going to have a fantastic time. I'm going to be supporting our boys out there. And yeah, I'm going to be representing the European casters, of course.
Yeah, at worst you're in San Diego. I mean,
That's it.
California is a beautiful place, so I think I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But thank you very much for coming on, boys. We'll try and get something out after the event as well to discuss how our predictions sort of came right, which I'm predicting there will be. That's the only prediction I'm making because you two boys are very clever, and I expect this of you. Now, if Elliot was on here, he would have said something stupid and said something like SSG first, Lucen second, but. Fortunately, we don't have El here. No, we wish he could have come on, but other commitments. He's just not. He's just. Some people are built differently, and it's just we drag ourselves.
He is definitely built differently.
Absolutely. Anyway, thank you very much,
guy.
guys. Thank you very much, and we'll discuss it next week in a second episode. But thank you very much, guys, for watching. Please leave a like on the video and click subscribe if you can. We'll have more Gears of War content come to you very, very shortly.